It was over 20 years ago when Porsche brought out their very first SUV, the Cayenne. And to be fair, there were a lot of people that were kind of unhappy with the situation. But 3 generations of Cayenne later and over 1.5 million sold, you can't dispute the Cayenne has been a success. And over my shoulder behind me is the first ever electric Cayenne. Don't be worried, because they're still making the gasoline engine Cayenne alongside the new EV Cayenne for now. But let me tell you about how this car has over 1,000 horsepower and why that's not the most interesting thing about it. The first thing you notice is, of course, the styling. Down low on the car, you'll notice that there's these active air flaps that kind of were previewed on the 911 earlier. You've seen them on the 911 Turbo, on the GTS, and they're an active aerodynamic element. They open to facilitate cooling, and the upper ones, just below the headlights, route air through the brakes, through the air curtain alongside of the vehicle for better efficiency. In fact, despite being a very large vehicle, larger and lower than the previous gasoline engine Cayenne, this car sports a drag coefficient of just 0.25. Aerodynamic tricks are all across the Cayenne's body, even at the top just over the tailgate. There you'll find an active rear spoiler, which also works as an air brake during heavy braking. Pictured right here is the turbo model, but there is also, of course, the Cayenne base model. The base model has a very normal 400 horsepower or 435 during launch control, and it will go 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 4.9 seconds. The turbo will go 100 to 200 kilometers an hour in that same 4.9 seconds, 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in just 2.5 seconds. It normally makes 844 horsepower. However, when you just got to get around that slow truck, you can't make that pass safely with only 844 horsepower. And luckily, there's a push to pass button which gives you an additional 179 for a total of 1,023 horsepower. That's right, that's a Bugatti Veyron amount of horsepower for push to pass. But it doesn't stop there, because engage the most aggressive launch control and you unlock the full 1,139 horsepower briefly to go 0 to 100 or 0 to 200 or heck to the end of a drag strip in 9.9 seconds. That's right, this is a 9-second car, putting it in league with straight line performance as a McLaren 720S or even a 750S. And this is a 5-seat SUV. One thing that McLaren doesn't have are 3 different screens inside the vehicle. There's a 14.25-inch curved digital gauge cluster right in front of the driver. To the right of that is an interesting kind of bent screen, which is 12 inches or so. And a cool part about that is that usually the bottom part of that screen are menu buttons for your sound or your nav or your entertainment stuff. You can configure it any which way you like, but you can also push those settings all the way down and essentially use that entire screen for nav or for music or for whatever it is you would like to do. It's very configurable. And before you get mad, there is a volume knob, or more specifically, a volume roller. There are a few hard buttons for the critical functions of the vehicle, but most of it is in that big central touchscreen. And if that's not enough screens for you, there's an additional optional passenger display. The passenger display thankfully runs apps like YouTube, which make it actually useful. A lot of times we get in these cars, there is a passenger display, but it kind of just shows nav, trip, and music functions, and that's not what the passenger wants to do. They want to watch videos. In fact, you can watch our own Driving.ca videos on that passenger screen, and I recommend you do so. One thing I did notice is a lot of companies, when they have that passenger display, they use a special kind of privacy glass so that the driver cannot see that display. However, in this one, at least while in park, I was able to fully see the videos and YouTube, whatever is playing on the passenger screen, from the driver's seat. So I'm not sure if that will make production. Underneath is a storage cubicle for your phones or your wallet and stuff like that. Roll that away, and below you have wireless phone charging, 2 USB-C media ports, behind that 2 USB-C charge ports, and just a whole lot of storage in general. The front center console is full of places to put your phones. You could charge 4 phones at once in the center console alone. Also new in the interior are these seats with integrated headrests. Now, the seat and the headrest are one piece, but the headrest itself is kind of a separate pillow which moves up and down, fully adjustable, of course. Now, an interesting thing is that they are heated, but not only the seat is heated, but also the armrests on the front and rear doors and on the front center console. So on those cold Canadian mornings, your butt, your back, and your elbows will still be toasty. And of course, there's a heated steering wheel. And not only that, but the seats also have a massage function, which is pretty standard in a lot of luxury vehicles. However, these ones are interesting because the massage function is integrated with the stereo to provide extra kick for a feeling of extra bass on those bassy songs. Now, despite the fact that this electric Cayenne is lower on the outside than the previous gasoline Cayenne, it actually has more headroom. How? Those new seats are mounted much lower in the car. Now, the heart of the operation is a 113 kilowatt hour battery. And of course, it is the very best battery with all the best charging stuff you could imagine. It is 400 kilowatt hour capable charging. If you can find one of those super powerful chargers, you can charge this car from 10 to 80% in just 16 minutes. Welcome to my pad. This unassuming little gray black pad is actually an inductive charging pad for the car. And an interesting thing is that this isn't an accessory you can just buy for any Porsche later. When you buy your new Cayenne, you must specify the inductive charging option, and you get this charging pad. It installs through the electrical grid of your house like any other EV charger, except it's meant to go on the ground. It can go in a garage, it can go outside. It's waterproof, weatherproof, although it isn't snowplow proof, so if you get your driveway plowed, you might want to countersink it. But it is a very durable unit, and Porsche says you could even drive the car on top of it if you had to. Now, this provides 11 kilowatts of charging power. It's a really innovative feature, and Porsche is not actually the first one to do this, but they are the first one to try it in a while. And my first question was, well, how do I know it's not going to flambe all the neighborhood squirrels? Well, they tell me it actually detects life on top of it. It detects metal objects, living objects. It knows when there's something crossing over the pad or even just blocking the flow of current above the pad. It will stop a charge. In fact, if you drop, for example, a penny on it, it will charge at a different point on the pad. It will avoid it to basically make sure the penny does not fuse itself to the pad itself. And one of the other questions you might have is, how do I know when I'm on top of the pad? Well, if you get in the car, put it in drive, it knows it's close to the pad, and it will actually give you a little ball on a dot and show you to guide you to where you need to park the car specifically to be over the pad for optimal charging. Now, you might really like the look of the Cayenne Turbo S here, but maybe you don't want 1,000 horsepower or to pay that sizable price penalty. You can get a lot of the look by ordering these big 22-inch wheels on the base Cayenne. And in fact, you'll also get the 20 millimeter wider fender flares to fit those big tires, which they tell me the rears are the exact same size and dimensions as you'll find in a 911 GT3 RS. Now, provincial subsidies for EVs will vary based on province, but the MSRP for the new Cayenne EV is $131,300 Canadian for the base Cayenne and $178,300 for the all-conquering turbo model. Deliveries will begin in summer of 2026, but you can order yours right now. Now, another note is that this is a very personalizable car. There are 13 standard colors, which is good. A lot of cars only offer you one, and it's a boring color. 5 of these colors are actually new to the brand. There are no fewer than 9 wheel designs and 12 different interior combinations, including a vegan one if you do not want leather in the interior of your new Cayenne. And of course, paint to sample is still offered. Now, as you might imagine, a big battery and big capability in a large SUV is going to make a heavy vehicle. But to be honest, it's not as heavy as I did expect. The base model, you're looking at about 5,500 pounds. And the turbo model, with its larger brakes and wheels and all that other performance stuff, 5,800 pounds. That's a lot of mass. But as we've seen before, Porsche engineers are very good at hiding that mass when they need to. And we're very excited to actually drive this car when it gets closer to the summer of 2026 when it will launch. For Driving.ca from Los Angeles, California, I'm Clayton Seams, and stay tuned for a first drive on this car when we get a chance to get our hands on it. And if you like alpaca-themed music, you really got to check out Alpaca's Attack Us by Peter Blakeney on Spotify. It's really the ticket. It sounds great on these massage seats with, pumping the bass to it. You really got to check that out too.